My name is Elena Brooks. I am 71 years old, and until a few months ago, I thought I understood what love meant. I thought love was something that stayed, something that held you even when the world fell apart. But I learned that sometimes, love simply walks away. It started on a cloudy Tuesday morning, the kind where the light never quite wakes up. The rain had been falling since dawn, tapping softly on the roof of my little house on Maplewood Street. I had been feeling dizzy for a few weeks, nothing terrible, just a faintness that came and went. Michael, my only son, insisted on taking me to the hospital for a checkup. Michael. My pride. My heart. My reason for surviving after his father passed away 7 years ago. I remember sitting in the passenger seat as he drove, watching the wipers slide across the glass, wiping away raindrops like tiny tears. He looked tired that morning. Maybe it was work, or maybe it was me, I could never tell anymore. He barely spoke during the drive, only checking his phone at every red light. He had that restless energy that young men have, always chasing something, always moving. I smiled faintly, remembering when his father was the same way, always trying to make the world better, always in motion, never still. When we reached the hospital, Michael parked right in front of the entrance and said, "I'll get you a wheelchair, Mom. Just stay put." He ran inside, leaving the car running. I looked at his empty seat and whispered, "He's a good boy, James. You'd be proud of him," as if my late husband could hear me from somewhere beyond the rain. Minutes later, Michael returned, pushing a wheelchair. He smiled, that quick, practiced smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. "Let's get you checked out, okay? It won't take long." The nurses were kind, as nurses often are, but I noticed something in their eyes, that polite sympathy reserved for the elderly. They spoke softly, as though my ears had grown too fragile for truth. After a few tests, the doctor came in with a clipboard and that professional tone doctors use when they're trying not to worry you. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, "you're a little dehydrated, and your blood pressure is unstable. We'd like to keep you overnight, just to monitor things." I looked at Michael, searching for reassurance, for that sonly comfort that says, "I've got you, Mom." He nodded absent-mindedly while scrolling his phone. "Yeah, sure, whatever you think is best," he said to the doctor. Then he turned to me. "It's just one night, Mom. I'll stay until you're settled." I didn't want him to stay. I didn't want to be a burden. "Go on, sweetheart," I said. "I'll be fine. It's just one night." He smiled again, that same hollow smile. "Mom, I'll be right back," he said. "Just need to handle a few things." And that was the last time I saw him for 3 weeks.
The first night was quiet. I lay in the hospital bed listening to the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor and the distant hum of voices from the hallway. Every sound felt amplified, the rustle of sheets, the footsteps of nurses, the whisper of the air vent. I told myself Michael would be back in the morning. He probably had work or errands. But morning came, and he didn't. By afternoon, I started to worry. By the second night, I stopped pretending I wasn't. I asked the nurse at the desk if he'd called. She checked, shook her head, and said, "No messages for you, Mrs. Brooks." Her smile was kind but pitying. The next day, I stared at my phone. No missed calls. No texts. Nothing. I scrolled through old messages just to see his name on the screen. Most were short replies. "Sure, Mom. Can't talk, busy. Later." It hurt to realize how small our conversations had become, like crumbs left after a meal. That night, I tried to sleep, but the loneliness was heavier than the blankets. The hospital was quiet except for the faint beeping of machines and the sound of someone coughing down the hall. At one point, I whispered into the dark, "Michael?" No answer. Just the hum of silence. The nurses began to whisper. I heard them in passing. "She's still alone," one said softly. "Yeah," another answered. "Her son dropped her off and hasn't come back." They didn't mean to be cruel, they were just telling the truth. But sometimes, truth cuts deeper than any knife. On the third day, a nurse named Clara came to check on me. She was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes and a voice that could calm storms. "How are we feeling today, Mrs. Brooks?" she asked. "Better," I lied. "Just waiting for my son to come." Clara smiled faintly, setting down a tray of food. "I'm sure he'll come soon." Her words were gentle, but I heard the unspoken pity beneath them. I didn't eat much that day. The food tasted like paper. Each night, I held my husband's old wedding ring in my hand, a simple gold band, worn thin with years of love. He used to tell me, "Elena, when I'm gone, you'll never be alone. Michael will be there." And I had believed him. But as the days turned into a week, I started to doubt even that. One afternoon, a volunteer came by with a bouquet of flowers. "These are for you, Mrs. Brooks," she said. I smiled faintly. "From my son?" She looked at the card and hesitated. "It just says, 'Get well soon.' No name." I stared at the flowers, white lilies. My husband's favorite. I wondered if Michael even knew that. Later that evening, I called his number again. It went straight to voicemail. "Hi, Michael," I said softly. "It's Mom. Just checking in. The doctor says I might be here another few days. I hope everything's okay. Call me when you can, sweetheart." I hung up and waited. He never called back. A week passed. Then 2. The nurses started to treat me like family. Clara brought me extra tea. Another nurse, George, shared funny stories to make me laugh. But laughter in that room always felt borrowed, like it didn't belong to me. Every night, I prayed. Not for healing. Not even for myself. I prayed for my son. That wherever he was safe. That maybe guilt would nudge his heart and guide him back. But prayers don't always travel as fast as pain. One evening, Clara walked in with a clipboard. "Mrs. Brooks," she said softly, "the billing department needs to confirm your insurance details." I nodded and gave her my card. As she left, I overheard 2 staff members talking near the door. "Who's paying her bills?" one asked. "I don't know," said the other. "But it's being covered. Someone's making payments." I froze. Michael hadn't called, hadn't visited, but he was paying? Maybe he was helping from afar, ashamed to face me. That thought comforted me, for a while. But a few days later, I would learn that wasn't true at all. On the 15th day, a social worker came to visit. She sat beside my bed, her tone soft but businesslike. "Mrs. Brooks, do you have anyone at home with you?" "No," I said. "Just my son, but he's been busy." She nodded slowly, making notes. "You've been here over 2 weeks. We just want to ensure you'll have someone to help you when you're discharged." I smiled weakly. "My son will come. He always does." But even as I said it, my voice trembled. That night, Clara stayed a little longer. She pulled up a chair beside my bed. "Can I tell you something, Mrs. Brooks?" she asked. "Of course, dear." "I grew up without a mother," she said quietly. "She passed when I was 10. Every time I see you waiting, it reminds me of her." I reached for her hand and held it. "You're very kind, Clara," I said softly. "Don't be sad. We all lose someone. The trick is to love the ones who stay." She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. When she left, I whispered to myself. The ones who stay. And that's when I realized, sometimes, there are none. By the start of the 3rd week, my health had improved. The doctor said I might be discharged soon. "Once your blood pressure stabilizes, you can go home," he said. Home. The word felt foreign. A house without laughter. Empty rooms filled with echoes. I stared at my reflection in the small mirror beside the bed. My hair had thinned, my skin paled, but my eyes, they were still the same, searching, hopeful, stubborn. "Where are you, Michael?" I whispered. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up slowly, holding onto the rails for balance, and walked toward the window. Outside, the city lights shimmered like tiny promises, each one burning, fading, burning again. I thought about Michael's childhood, his first day at school, his scraped knees, his laughter. He used to run to me when he was hurt. Now, when I hurt, he runs away. And still, I loved him. I loved him more than my own. The next morning, Clara came in early. "You're looking stronger today," she said. I smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm ready to go home." She hesitated. "Do you want me to call your son? Maybe he can help you get ready." "Don't trouble him," I said. "He'll come when he's ready." But deep down, I knew he wouldn't. That evening, I found a small envelope on my bedside table. It had no name, no note, just a folded piece of paper inside with a simple message. "You are not alone." My hands trembled as I read it again and again. No signature. No clue who left it. Just those 4 words. And for the first time in weeks, I cried, not from pain, but from something deeper. Hope. And for the first time in weeks, I cried. Hope. The days that followed felt like walking through fog. I'd go to work, make dinner for one, stare at the chair across from me where Michael used to sit, his laughter echoing faintly in my head, and wonder if I was the one who broke something sacred. Every evening, I'd check my phone. No message. No call. Nothing but silence. The silence was cruel, the kind that whispers lies. He's happy without you. He doesn't care anymore. You lost him forever. But mothers never stop hoping. Hope isn't a choice. It's stitched into our souls. One night, I found myself at his old room's door. The air inside was stale, untouched. His books were still stacked on the shelf, To Kill a Mockingbird, Of Mice and Men, and that old notebook where he used to write lyrics. I picked it up, and my heart clenched. Inside, scribbled in his messy handwriting, were words that broke me. Maybe one day she'll see me. Not as her son who failed, but as the man who tried. I sank to the floor, the notebook pressed against my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every argument, every word I said out of fear, not wisdom. How many times had I shut him out thinking I was protecting him? How many dreams had I buried for the sake of stability? The next morning, I called my sister, Marianne. She was always the calm one, a gentle mirror of reason. "Elena," she said softly, "he just needs space. You both said things you regret. Give it time." But time was cruel too. It stretched and twisted, turning days into weeks, weeks into months. Seasons changed. Leaves fell. And still, no Michael. Winter arrived early that year. The first snow came down like a quiet forgiveness. I was at the cafe near my office, sipping black coffee, when a familiar song began playing, one of Michael's favorites. A piano melody that once filled our living room. I froze. Every note was a memory. Then, through the cafe window, I saw a boy sitting at the corner table, his posture, the way he held his coffee, something about him felt like Michael. My heart leapt. I stood up, trembling. But when he turned his head, it wasn't him. Just another stranger with kind eyes. Still, that moment changed something in me. I realized I couldn't keep living in the past. If Michael was out there, I needed to become the person he could come back to. So, I began to heal. Slowly. Painfully. I joined a local community center, taught piano to children who couldn't afford lessons. The first day, my hands shook on the keys. But when a little girl smiled and said, "Miss Brooks, that's beautiful," something inside me melted. Music, the very thing that caused our rift, was saving me. Each night after class, I'd write to Michael. Letters I never sent. I'd tell him about the children, about the laughter that filled the cold halls, about how I was learning to forgive myself. 6 months passed. Then, one stormy evening, as I was locking up the piano room, the phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, heart pounding. Hello? A pause. Then a voice, low, tired, familiar. Mom? My breath caught. Michael? He exhaled shakily. Yeah, it's me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of rain filled the space between us. Where are you? I finally whispered. New York, he said. I've been playing gigs. Small ones. Nothing big. I wanted to hear your voice. I smiled through tears. You don't know how long I've waited for this call. I know, he murmured. I wasn't ready. I thought you hated me. Oh, Michael, I said, my voice trembling. I never hated you. I was just scared. He didn't respond at first. Then quietly. I wrote something. For you. It's called The Day She Stayed. I play it every night before the crowd leaves. My heart cracked open. Can I hear it? I asked. He hesitated, then said, not yet. When the time's right. Before hanging up, he said something that burned into my soul. I'm not ready to come home, but I'm not gone either. That night, I sat by the window, watching the rain trace stories on the glass. I whispered his name into the storm. For the first time, the silence didn't hurt. It was full of promise. I knew this wasn't the end of our story, it was only the pause before the next movement. Hope, soft, fragile, but alive, had returned. And I swore to myself, whenever he did come back, I would listen. Truly listen. Because sometimes, love doesn't mean holding on. It means learning when to let go, and when to open your arms again. I used to think silence was peaceful. That quiet mornings meant calm. But after Michael left, silence became the loudest sound in my life. Each morning, I'd wake up to a still house, no footsteps, no music from his room, no laughter spilling through the kitchen. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the old wall clock above the sink. At first, I told myself it was temporary. That he just needed space. But days became weeks, and weeks became months. And in that quiet, I began to hear everything I had ignored, the echo of my own mistakes. I still remember the day I tried calling him again, the 10th time, maybe the 12th. The call went straight to voicemail. His voice, recorded weeks earlier, sounded cheerful, unaware of the storm we had since become. Hey, it's Michael. Leave a message. That single sentence felt like a wall I couldn't climb over. So I left a message. My voice cracked halfway through. Michael, it's Mom. I hope you're okay. I made lasagna, your favorite. Just wanted you to know I still have a plate for you. I always will. Then I hung up, and the silence swallowed me again. Sometimes I'd catch myself setting 2 plates at dinner. One for me. One for him. Then I'd sit there, staring at the empty chair, the one across from me, and whisper stories as if he were still listening. I'd talk about the neighbors, about how the maple tree finally bloomed early that spring. I even joked once about how bad I was at fixing the faucet. And every night, I'd end with, "Good night, my boy." Even when I knew he couldn't hear me. The hardest part wasn't the loneliness. It was the guilt. I used to wonder if I had been too hard on him, too proud, too controlling, too desperate to make him live the life I thought was safe. Michael had dreams, big ones. Music, travel, a future built from passion, not paychecks. But I was terrified. I had already lost my husband in a car accident. The idea of losing Michael, even to a dream, felt unbearable. So I held on too tightly. And in trying to protect him, I drove him away. One evening, I went to the mailbox. It was snowing, soft, gentle flakes that melted on my eyelashes. Among the usual bills and flyers, there was a plain white envelope. No return address. Inside was a money order, $500. No name. No message. I frowned, confused. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. But the next month, another one arrived. And the month after that, another. Each time, same handwriting, same envelope, no signature. I told myself it couldn't be Michael. He didn't have that kind of money. But a small, stubborn part of me wanted to believe. I started saving the envelopes in a wooden box beside my bed. Each one felt like a heartbeat in the silence. A sign that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't forgotten. Days passed slowly. I kept teaching piano lessons at the community center. The kids' laughter was my only real company. One of them, a shy little girl named Sarah, once asked me, "Miss Elena, why do you smile when you're sad?" I didn't know how to answer her. So I just said, "Because it reminds me that I'm still here." She didn't understand. But one day she will. One rainy afternoon, I sat by the window with tea in my hands, watching the world blur behind streaks of water. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, my heart racing. I picked up. "Hello?" There was silence. Then, a breath. For a moment, I thought it was him. But then a soft male voice said, "Mrs. Brooks? This is Daniel from Brookside Auto Repairs. I just wanted to confirm your payment went through." "Payment?" I asked. "Yes, ma'am. The one for the red sedan you own. It was handled by someone else, actually. A young man named." The line cut off for a second. My heart thudded. "Named what?" I asked quickly. He paused. "Michael. Michael Brooks." I froze. I thanked him, hung up, and just sat there, staring at the phone, trembling. He'd paid my car repair bill. Why? How? And why through someone else? The next morning, I drove to the repair shop myself. The owner confirmed it. He had walked in 2 weeks ago, quietly paid the full amount, and left before anyone could thank him. He didn't say a word about me. Just smiled. Paid. Left. The owner said, "He seemed like a good kid, ma'am. A little sad, but kind." And that was when I broke. Right there, in that garage that smelled of oil and dust, I wept. Because my son, the boy I'd thought had turned his back on me, hadn't forgotten me after all. He was still out there, watching, caring, from a distance I couldn't bridge. From that day on, I started leaving the porch light on every night. Just in case he ever drove by. Maybe it was foolish, but it made me feel closer to him, as if the glow could guide him home. I also began writing letters. Not to send, just to speak. Every word I couldn't say aloud, I poured onto paper. Letters like, "Dear Michael, today I saw your favorite band on TV. You'd laugh to know they're still trying to play that old song you loved. I miss your laughter." Or, "Dear Michael, I cleaned your room today. Don't worry, I didn't throw anything away. I found your old guitar pick under the bed." Dozens of letters. None mailed. Just sealed, tied with a ribbon, and kept in a box beside the envelopes. Maybe one day, I thought, he'd read them. A few months later, as spring bloomed, I received a phone call from my friend Linda. She said she'd seen Michael performing in a small bar 2 towns away. She wasn't sure, but she swore it was him, playing guitar, singing quietly to a small crowd. At first, I didn't believe her. Then she texted me a photo. It was blurry, taken from a distance. But I knew that profile, the curve of his jaw, the tilt of his head, the way his fingers moved across the strings. It was him. Alive. Smiling. My heart flooded with warmth and ache all at once. I wanted to drive there immediately. But something inside me whispered, not yet. And during those long, quiet weeks, something inside me changed. I learned how to live again, not by filling the silence, but by listening to it. I learned that love doesn't always mean holding on. Sometimes it means standing back and watching the one you love learn how to fly. Every note I played on the piano was a prayer, not for him to come back, but for him to find peace. And maybe, somewhere out there, under the same moonlight, he was playing his own melody too. Maybe he needed space to become who he wanted to be before facing the mother he'd left behind. So I waited. That night, I stood on the porch again, watching the stars. And for the first time since he left, I smiled without tears. Because even in the distance, I could feel him. Not gone. Just, growing. I remember the day everything began to change. It was a gray morning, the kind that makes even coffee taste like sadness. I sat at the kitchen table, going through the stack of bills I'd ignored for weeks. The electric company, the water service, even the phone bill, all neatly stamped paid. But I hadn't paid them. At first, I thought maybe there was some sort of error, a system glitch. I called the electric company and gave them my name, my account number. The woman on the other end said politely, "Oh, Mrs. Brooks, your son already took care of everything. Payments have been automatic for the last 6 months." My heart skipped. Michael? That couldn't be. He hadn't spoken to me in nearly a year, not since the fight. The one where I said things I shouldn't have. The one where he slammed the door so hard, a picture frame cracked on the wall. I asked her again, my voice shaking. "Ma'am, could you repeat the name on the account?" She hesitated. "It says Michael A. Brooks. Is that correct?" It felt like the air left the room. For a moment, I couldn't speak. He had been paying my bills, silently, secretly, while pretending I didn't exist. When I hung up, I just sat there, staring at the phone, tears burning the corners of my eyes. Why, Michael? Why would you help me but never speak to me? That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the porch light flicker against the glass, my thoughts tangled in memories. The day he left. The coldness in his eyes. The way I had called him selfish, ungrateful, words I regretted the second they escaped my mouth. He had shouted back. "You only care about appearances, Mom. You never listened to what I wanted." And then, silence. 4 months. Now, knowing he had still been there, quietly taking care of me, broke something deep inside. I whispered into the empty room. "I'm sorry, Michael." 2 days later, I decided to visit the old bookstore downtown, the one Michael used to love. It was dusty, dim, filled with second-hand paperbacks and forgotten dreams. The owner, Mrs. Carter, smiled when she saw me. "Elena Brooks. Haven't seen you in ages. How's your boy doing? Still playing music?" That question hit me like a wave. I forced a smile. "I wouldn't know," I said softly. "We haven't talked much." Her eyes softened. "Oh, I see. Well, last month he came in here. Bought some old poetry books, Rumi, Neruda, and something called Letters to My Mother. He said he was traveling again, playing small gigs." My chest tightened. He had been here. In this very store. So close, and I never knew. When I left, I walked the streets in a daze. Every corner, every cafe reminded me of him, the way he used to hum while sketching song lyrics on napkins, the way his laughter filled a room like sunlight. And then I saw it, a flyer taped to a lamp post. A local concert announcement. Live at the Blue Lantern, Friday night. Michael Brooks Trio. My knees went weak. My son. Playing in town. That Friday, I went to the bar alone. It wasn't the kind of place I usually went to, small, smoky, filled with the scent of cheap whiskey and old dreams. I sat near the back, close enough to see the stage but far enough to stay unseen. And then I saw him. Michael stepped into the spotlight, guitar in hand. He looked older, leaner, his eyes sharper but still carrying that same quiet fire. When he began to play, the room went silent. The melody was soft, aching, and beautiful, a lullaby wrapped in sorrow. And then, he began to sing. She built me from kindness. She broke me with fear. But I still see her shadow. When no one is near. The words hit me like thunder. He was singing about me. Tears blurred my vision. Every chord felt like an apology, every note like a confession. When the song ended, the audience erupted into applause. Michael smiled faintly, bowed, and stepped off stage. My hands shook. I wanted to go to him, to hold him, to say I'm sorry. But my feet felt frozen. I waited for him outside. The night air was cold, the city quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. After a few minutes, he came out the side door, guitar case slung over his shoulder. He looked tired, the kind of tired that sits in the bones. Michael, I said softly. He stopped. Turned. His eyes widened, surprise, then confusion, then something unreadable. Mom? I nodded, tears streaming freely now. I heard your song. He looked down, clutching the strap of his guitar. I didn't think you'd come. I didn't think you'd want me to, I whispered. We stood there for what felt like forever, neither of us knowing how to fill the silence that years had built between us. Finally, he sighed. Mom, why are you here? Because I needed to see you. Because I found out you'd been helping me, paying my bills, sending money. His jaw tightened. I didn't do it for thanks. I know, I said. You did it because despite everything, you still love me. He flinched, as if love was a wound he wasn't ready to reopen. Mom, he said quietly, I did it because I couldn't stand the thought of you struggling. Even if I couldn't talk to you. I still couldn't stop caring. My heart cracked open. I stepped closer. Then why, Michael? Why stay away? He looked up, and for the first time, I saw the tears he'd been hiding. Because you never saw me, Mom. You only saw the version of me you wanted. The one who would take over Dad's business, who'd stay close, who'd never make mistakes. I couldn't breathe under all that expectation. His words cut deep, but they were true. I had built dreams around him, not for him. I'm sorry, I whispered. I just didn't want you to fail. He shook his head slowly. I didn't need protection. I needed faith. The silence between us was heavier than ever. He looked at me one last time. I have to go, Mom. My band's waiting. That night, I lay awake replaying every word he'd said. I needed faith. The next morning, I went to the small music store near my house and bought a simple wooden frame. I printed a photo, the one of him as a child, sitting at the old piano, laughing. I placed it on my bedside table. Every night, I looked at that photo and whispered. I believe in you, Michael. Weeks passed. No calls. No messages. But then one morning, an envelope arrived, no return address. Inside was a ticket. Michael Brooks, live in New York City. Carnegie Hall. My breath caught. Carnegie Hall. My son had made it. The ticket trembled in my hands as I stared at it again and again, like it might disappear if I blinked. Carnegie Hall, it said in elegant gold letters. Underneath, Michael Brooks, live in concert. My son. My Michael. After all those years of silence, distance, and unspoken love, he had reached the very place I once dreamed he'd be, the world stage. I sat on the edge of my bed, the morning sun spilling through the window, touching the framed photo beside me, little Michael at 6 years old, grinning at the piano keys like they were magic. I whispered, you did it, sweetheart. But inside, I was terrified. What if he didn't want me there? What if the ticket wasn't an invitation, but a message? What if he only wanted me to see him, not meet him? Still, I packed my bag that night. A soft blue dress. A locket with his childhood picture. And the old letter I never had the courage to send, the one that began with, "I'm sorry," and ended with, "I love you more than life itself." The flight to New York felt endless. Outside the window, clouds rolled like waves, glowing gold beneath the morning sun. Every mile felt like a lifetime, every heartbeat, a question I wasn't ready to answer. When the plane landed, the air was cold, sharp, alive with energy. I took a cab to the small hotel near Central Park, the kind of place where time seemed to slow down. I looked out the window and saw people hurrying along the sidewalks, their faces full of stories I'd never know. And I thought, how many mothers in this world are just like me? Waiting, hoping, regretting, praying for one more chance. That evening, as the city lights came alive, I made my way to Carnegie Hall. The air shimmered with excitement, photographers, fans, and music lovers gathered under the grand archway. My heels clicked softly against the marble floor as I entered the hall, clutching the ticket like a lifeline. The usher smiled as I handed it to him. "Row C, seat 12, front and center," he said kindly. Front and center. Michael had made sure I would see everything. No hiding this time. When I walked into the concert hall, I gasped. Golden balconies curved above me like crowns, and the chandeliers glowed like captured stars. I sat quietly as the crowd filled the room, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out the soft chatter. Then, the lights dimmed. The curtains rose. And there he was. Michael. Under a single spotlight. Dressed in black, calm, confident, but when he looked out at the crowd, I could see the same boy I used to tuck in at night, the same spark in his eyes that no amount of time could erase. The audience erupted in applause. He smiled faintly, bowed, and sat at the piano.
The first notes floated into the silence, gentle, aching, familiar. It was our song. The lullaby I used to hum when he couldn't sleep. But now, it was fuller, deeper, like all his pain and love had been woven into the melody. As he played, I felt tears streaming down my cheeks. Every note was a conversation we never had. Every chord an apology I never spoke. And then, he began to sing. "You said the world was cruel. You built me walls of gold. But I was made for open skies. Not cages bought and sold. Still, I see your face in every star. In every night I roam. I'm still that boy who loved too much. Still calling, for home." The hall fell silent. No one moved. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. By the time the song ended, I couldn't stop crying. Applause thundered, people rose to their feet, and all I could do was whisper, "That's my son." After the concert, I waited outside the backstage door. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of rain and roses from a nearby stand. Musicians passed by, laughter echoing in the hallway, but my eyes searched only for one face. And then, the door opened. Michael stepped out, guitar case in hand, the same quiet fire in his eyes. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then I whispered, "I heard your song." He smiled faintly. "I saw you in the crowd." I took a step closer. "Michael, I didn't know if you wanted me here." He looked away, his voice low. "I wasn't sure either. But, when I sent that ticket, part of me hoped you would come."
The words broke something inside me. I reached into my purse and handed him the letter. The one I'd written years ago. "I was going to send this the night you left," I said softly. "But I was too proud. I thought you'd come back on your own. I was wrong." He took it gently, opened it, and read silently. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "Mom," he whispered. "I forgave you a long time ago." My breath caught. "You did?" He nodded. "I just didn't know how to find my way back." And then, finally, he stepped forward and hugged me. For the first time in years. I felt his arms around me, warm and real. I buried my face in his shoulder, sobbing. He whispered, "You're my mother. Nothing changes that." We walked together through the quiet New York streets that night. No cameras. No audience. Just a mother and her son, rediscovering what it meant to belong. We stopped at a small cafe near the park. Ordered hot chocolate, just like we used to when he was little. He told me about the years he'd spent playing in small bars. Sleeping in buses. Chasing songs no one wanted to hear. He told me about the loneliness. The heartbreak. The nights he thought of giving up. And I told him about the empty house. The quiet dinners. The regret that became my shadow. We both laughed and cried in the same breath. Realizing that, in our pain, we had never really been apart. When I returned to my hotel, I sat by the window and watched the city lights flicker like distant constellations. I thought of all the years lost to silence. All the love buried under pride. But now, I knew. Love never truly dies. It just waits for courage. A week later, Michael called me. He said, "Mom, I'm going on tour next month. Europe, Asia, everywhere." My heart swelled with pride. "That's amazing," I said. "Your father would be so proud." He chuckled softly. "Would you come with me? Just for the first show?" Tears welled again. "Are you sure?" He smiled through the phone. "I want you to be there, Mom. This time, as my guest." I packed my bags once more. But this time, the weight felt lighter. At the airport, I watched the sunrise through the glass. Golden and endless. For the first time in years, I felt peace. As the plane lifted off, I looked down at the city shrinking beneath the clouds and whispered, "We made it, Michael. Both of us." When I landed in Paris, the air felt different, softer somehow. Maybe it was the way the morning mist hung over the Seine, or maybe it was the way my heart felt light for the first time in years. Michael was waiting for me at the airport. He wasn't the boy I had once scolded for chasing impossible dreams. He was a man now, calm, grounded, his eyes filled with the kind of wisdom only pain can teach. He hugged me tightly, and for a moment, I felt the world slow down. "Welcome to my world, Mom," he whispered. And for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider. That evening, we walked together through the narrow Parisian streets. Street musicians played violins, laughter echoed from small cafes, and the city seemed alive, breathing in rhythm with our steps. Michael pointed at an old concert hall glowing in the distance. "That's where I'm performing tomorrow night," he said. My chest tightened. "It's beautiful." He smiled. "It's home." That night, I lay in my hotel room, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Memories of the past played like an old film in my mind, the fights, the words I couldn't take back, the look on his face when he walked out the door. I had carried that moment like a scar all these years. But now, I realized something I hadn't before: forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about letting love be louder than pain. And that's exactly what I felt: love, vast and unstoppable. The next evening, I sat in the front row of the concert hall. The lights dimmed. The audience hushed. And then, Michael walked on stage. He looked stunning, black suit, calm smile, eyes searching the crowd until they met mine. He nodded once, as if to say, "This is for you, Mom." He sat at the piano. The first notes floated through the hall, soft, delicate, and hauntingly familiar. It was the melody he used to play as a child when he couldn't sleep, the one I used to hum while cooking dinner, back when our home was still whole. But now, it was transformed, richer, deeper, filled with every tear, every heartbreak, every moment we thought we had lost. I covered my mouth, trembling. He was telling our story through music. Every note was an apology. Every chord was forgiveness. And I understood, this was his way of saying, we survived. When the final note faded, the audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the hall. Michael stood, bowed slightly, and then motioned for silence. He looked straight at me. "There's someone very special here tonight," he said into the microphone. The audience quieted instantly. "My mother," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "She taught me that love, even when broken, can find its way home again." I felt every eye turn toward me, but for once, I didn't shrink. I lifted my chin, tears streaming freely. The crowd erupted again, this time, not for fame or music, but for something deeper. For love. For forgiveness. For a mother and son who finally found their way back. After the show, we stood backstage, surrounded by flowers and congratulations. He looked at me and said softly, "You know, I always thought success would fix everything. But it wasn't the stage or the applause I needed, it was this. You." I smiled, my voice trembling. And I always thought being right mattered more than being kind. But I was wrong. All that mattered was you coming home. He took my hand. "Then let's not waste another day." And we didn't. In the weeks that followed, I traveled with him, from Paris to Berlin, Rome to Tokyo. Each night, I watched him perform, and each morning, we'd share coffee and laughter. The world blurred around us, trains, lights, music, but what mattered most was that we were together again. One evening in Tokyo, after another sold-out show, Michael turned to me and said, "I'm thinking of recording an album, about us." I laughed softly. "About us?" He nodded. "About second chances. About love that doesn't quit." I looked at him, tears welling again. "Then call it Homecoming." He smiled. "Perfect." Months later, when the album was finally released, I sat in my living room, the same one that had once felt too empty. Now it was filled with life, music, photos from our travels, laughter echoing off the walls. The first track began with a piano melody, the same one from Paris. Years later, when people asked me about my greatest accomplishment, I didn't talk about career or wealth. I simply said, "I found my son again." And in doing that, I found myself. And every night, when I hear his music on the radio, I smile. Because every note reminds me that love, no matter how far it drifts, always finds its way home. Life gives us second chances, but only if we're brave enough to take them. And sometimes, redemption doesn't come from perfection. It comes from forgiveness. So, if you're listening to this and there's someone you've lost to pride or pain, call them. Write to them. Find them. Because one day, you'll look back and realize that forgiveness